In this episode, we'll learn about the power of personality and how to use that to lock the secrets to understanding everyone in our lives. Helping us with this topic is an author, a life coach, and the founder of the Utopia Project. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Well,
How
thank
are
you
you
for so
doing?
much for having me, Topi. I'm doing great.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted that we finally got to connect, and I'm looking forward to learning so much from you, learning so much about personality, especially personality types. That's something that I've always had in different conversations whenever I really got into the root of it. But before we get into all of that, I would just like to learn about the motivation behind this. Like, what motivated you to devote the last 2 decades of your life helping people to forge a path to success that works for them?
You know, I think it's well, obviously, I guess it's like everyone else. It's like when you're young, right? You know, you have these certain feelings and you try to pursue the way to like address those feelings. And for me, I always felt a little different. And then I realized I would always meet like one or two people who also felt that way. And by different, I mean like, having different values than what are pushed on by, let's say, your teachers or society, right? And I think for me, I was like, whoa, is there something weird with me, like wrong with me? And I discovered personality types around like when I was 15 or 16. I think I discovered Myers-Briggs at that point, or MBTI. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to look this stuff up. And I just studied everything I could about personality types. We've always had astrology and things like that. But in this case, I decided to do different things. And, I looked at all these things and I researched it. And then I decided to start my own education company to go a little further with it. And through that decade of working with like about 1,000 students a year, I developed my own personality typing methodology. So.
That's awesome. That's great. I remember while preparing for this conversation also, I was reading about whenever you think about your high school days or something like that, you describe yourself as a bad student. I don't know if you could touch on that a little bit also to help us understand how you saw yourself back then.
I always joke around and say I was a bad student. I always say I was an AF student. You know how they always say, are you an AB student? I was an AF student, meaning I could get an F in a class or I could get an A in the class, depending on how well I got along with the teacher. And by the way, it was not their fault. It was always generally my fault if I wasn't getting along. But I really felt like if I was really interested in something and I felt very strongly about it, then I wanted to pursue it. And if I wasn't interested, then I wouldn't, regardless of whether, people would say, oh, but you need to do that. You need to get good grades because are you going to get a good job? Because you got to get into a good college and, that linear approach, right? Or some people just saying, well, you should behave and listen to the teacher and do what they tell you because they're older and you should follow, a certain sense of authority. I realized I wasn't like that. And that's how, when I always say I was a bad student, it's mainly because of that. And it has to do a lot with my personality type. And working with students, I saw a lot of kids who had that same personality type. And I always think, well, are you going to fight that? Or as a teacher, would you have to fight that? Or is it going to be more like, let me meet this student where they're at? Because at the end of the day, the goal is to like help each person reach their full potential, right? Not what you think they should be.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you have to understand them. And I think we'll get to that very soon. You have to be able to understand them and understand their type, their personality type, and help them to mold their life around who they are. Yeah, and that's awesome. I know that you've helped people in the past with their personality types. You have personality typed over 50,000 people during your career, and that's why I would like us to go into this already. And I'm so curious to learn about this. Like from your experience, can you educate us on the different personality types and how we could differentiate them?
Yeah. With my methodology, it gets a little wonky when you get into all these methodologies. So basically I separate people into 4 different categories. I call them packs. And you'll see in a bit why I call them packs.
Yeah.
But each pack has a different core value. And I think that's the difference between my methodology and the ones that came previously. Oftentimes, most personality typing systems are based on what people see, right? Like, oh, is this person good at this? Do they like to do this? Are they more organized? And are they more talkative? And mine is more like, why do we do the things we do, right? Our deepest values kind of determine that. And I feel like that's a better indicator of who we are. And so we have 4 packs. One values safety and security. Another pack values excitement. Another pack values self-knowledge. And the last pack values information. And so those are 4 very different things. And I think when you meet people, you're going to realize that, oh yeah, a majority of people do value safety and security, right? Most people, you ask them, what do you want out of your life? They're like, I just want to be happy. I'll be safe, maybe get married and have kids, because obviously that foundation makes people feel secure, buy a home or whatever and live in this place and like have a steady job, right? And I think that's the majority of people. But there's that those other three packs that have totally different values. And you can imagine like how someone who values safety and security would clash with someone who values excitement. Like the exact reason why someone likes excitement generally is like, let's say someone goes on a roller coaster and they're like, yeah, I love it because I'm getting thrown around. I think I'm going to die. It makes me feel really excited, like the risk, right? Yeah. And the safety and security person is like, wait, I don't want to feel that way. I want to feel the opposite of that, right? And so those are the 4 packs. And then within those 4 packs, there are 4 animal personality types. So obviously 4 times 4 makes 16 personality types in total. And so that's, once again, I call them packs because they're animal personality types and those are easy to remember, right? So.
Okay. So can you like walk us through them? Are they like different combinations that we could have as a person? Can I be exciting and at the same time crave safety, or a mixture of both, or a blend, of
I don't believe in mixes. I think we all prioritize one over the other, right? Like, for example, if someone prizes information, I used to say that pack valued knowledge, and that was too sexy of a word. If you say knowledge is someone's core value, everybody's like, oh wait, knowledge is my core value, right? Like everyone's going to say that. So information is a little nerdier. So I always ask people like who feel that they're information seekers. I just say, well, would you experiment on yourself to see if a drug works? And you can generally tell by their reaction what they value, right? If you value safety and security, you think that the question that I just posed was incredibly stupid, right? You're like, what? Like, why would I experiment on myself? I could die. Like the risk, like what is the risk? I can kill myself just to figure out if this works or not, right? Whereas the person who values information, it doesn't mean that they're going to say yes to that, but I'll see their face and they'll consider it. Like on their face, they'll be like, like what's the good? Like, is it going to cure cancer? Because I think I might risk my life to see if this thing cures cancer. So generally, like we can like all the values, but we clearly prioritize one over the other, and that's something I found just over the course of meeting, thousands of people a year.
Yeah. So, I mean, so for someone who wants to live on the exciting part of life, for example, the person might not really want to crave for safety, or we really want to go for exciting adventures, events and activities, basically.
Yeah. Like, I think sometimes I call them hunters, by the way. I didn't say the categories.
Yeah.
I call the people who value safety and security gatherers. The ones that value excitement are hunters. And then the self-knowledge seekers are shamans. And then the information seekers are smiths, like blacksmiths. So if you can imagine a medieval village back in the day, we have these specific roles, right? And that kind of explains why we have so many gatherers, because back in the day, we probably needed more gatherers, right? And then hunters would probably be the second most populous in the village. And hunters are the excitement seekers, right? And I think sometimes hunters will be like, wait, are you saying I'm superficial? I just want to have like fun, like they'll get upset. I'm like, well, it's deeper than that. It's more, you want to experience everything that life has to offer viscerally. They want to taste everything, see everything, hear everything, smell everything. And I think that's a pretty cool motivation. I myself am not a hunter, but I definitely respect that. And I think, yeah, they're the most likely to want to travel and maybe not necessarily settle down, especially right away. My sister is a hunter, and I know when she graduated college, the very first job she got was on an Alaskan deep sea fishing boat. So, out in like not the wilderness, but out in the ocean, she wasn't actually doing the fishing, which is really risky, right? Which most of those guys are hunters, I'd imagine too. But she was part of that expedition in terms of like, I think she would inspect like the catch coming in and telling them, oh, do we have to throw it back? But either way, if you get what I mean, like hunters like to travel and experience the world.
Yeah. One question that's coming to my mind now, Eric, is I'm just thinking about these people that are up there right now, the Oprah Winfrey's, the Elon Musk. What kind of personality do you think they have? Do they have different personalities, or would you say it's like a general personality that they all?
Oh no, they definitely have different ones, as we can see. And I'm glad you picked two people that, because they're pretty different,
Yeah.
Oprah and Elon. And, and I'm just reading them based on what I see. Obviously, they can be totally different in person. I don't know. I've never met either of them, but just based on the personality that they project. If we think about what they value and also why people get upset at them or what's the conflict, I think with, let's say, Elon, it's a lot. I mean, he values information clearly, right? He's clearly a Smith. He doesn't really care about getting along with people. He doesn't care about like necessarily being nice, or like he probably doesn't know them as much as he thinks he does about like geopolitics and things like that nature. But that which he's researched a lot of and gotten a lot of information with and data and experimentation, he probably knows a ton about, right? So clearly in his field, he's brilliant. And so he would be a Smith. And he'd be a very specific type of Smith. The animal he would actually be is called a chimpanzee. And I think when we think obviously symbolically of monkeys just in general, in terms of the animal kingdom, we do think of like creatures that are like experiment more, right? They use tools. They're a little bit more like clever. I think when we think of monkeys, we think of cleverness, right? Versus, I don't know, like a water buffalo. I don't think we think of like water buffalo being particularly intelligent, right? We probably think of like hardworking. So yes, Elon Musk would be a Smith, and then Oprah would probably be a shaman. She would be like, her motivation would be self-knowledge, like discovering herself, finding about herself, and not only discovering more about herself, but helping others discover themselves, right? And that would probably be, funny thing is shamans and Smiths actually do get along quite well, and they are kind of similar because there's not that many of them. So they do definitely feel a little bit in the minority versus like the hunters and the gatherers. But they are very different, obviously, just comparing the two of them. Shamans are all about people. They're all about bringing people together and understanding people, where Smiths could care less about people. They just want to know about stuff, like information. And, both of those things are pretty useful in society, right? If we put them in the right spots. Like if you gave Elon Oprah's job and you gave Oprah Elon's job, they probably would not have done very well, right? In their particular fields, right? So
yeah. And that's going to inspire my next question, actually. The personalities that we have and the kind of careers that we could choose, and also the career path that we decide to go on. Like, I would like you to help me and also help listeners out there to understand how we could truly identify our personality types. Not like, okay, maybe I am this, maybe I am that, but definitely know their personality type, and also how that information could be used to choose the right career and choose the right career path. If I'm going to become a people's leader in my career, or I'm just going to go into a more technical skill and more technical field, different areas.
Yeah, I think in terms of figuring out your personality type, I mean, I have a test online on my website, but I'm always putting the disclaimer, like tests are just cookie cutter, right? Like you can't adjust it per person. So you can't totally trust a test, right? People have these books where they give someone a test in the beginning. The person takes the test and then the whole book is filled with prescriptions, right? But what if the test is wrong? Then you're doing all these things that don't even match what the person is. Whereas, so my book, The Power of Personality, I wrote to kind of help that, because the book is designed to be a test. So when you read the book, you'll be like, oh, okay, this is how the methodology works. This is how I can read people. And this is how I can determine, is this person this or is this person this? Including myself. Let me see what I am. And then there are portraits, and then you can read the portrait and see if that matches or not. And then once you do, then you can start figuring out, okay, because I value this certain thing, this is probably the path I want to take. Like oftentimes when we think of careers, we think like, oh, do you like this? Oh, do you like medicine? Do you like science? Okay, be a doctor. Like that's every parent, right? You like science, biology, doctor, math, oh, engineer, like parents,
exactly.
right. They're always trying to push. And I get it, doctors, we always need doctors and engineers. They're very, I don't want to say safe jobs, but they're safe in society. I don't think there's ever going to be a time in society where we don't have them. So I get it. Like you have those gatherer parents and they're just like, kids, take something so I don't have to worry about you. And I know that you're going to be safe and have a job, but even within those fields, like let's say like doctors, for example, in the health profession, like there are certain types of doctors that fit certain personalities better. Like if you're a hunter and you like excitement, and you don't necessarily need or want a steady schedule, and you're a doctor, you could be an ER doctor. The ER is pretty crazy and pretty exciting, and hunters are very good at adjusting. So they're very good at going, oh wait, what did I see? Okay, let me do this. Oh, this is different. Okay, let me do this, which I think would be perfect for working in an ER. Or they tend to be like, what are those? Gosh, orthotics. It's not an osteopath, but sorry, I forgot the type of job or type of doctor, but they focus on athletics, right? Or
Oh, okay.
kinesthesiology.
Okay.
And then other jobs or other like gatherers would probably be more likely to be like a dermatologist or something with a very steady schedule. So
Mm.
even within fields, different personalities can do well. You just have to find the fit job within that field that really fits your own values and what you want out of life.
Yeah. But that's very I would say very valid and very vital, when choosing a career path, like knowing, okay, this is what this kind of career involves, and this is how my personality could fit into it, or maybe it's not a suitable match for me. It's not something I will feel comfortable or feel fulfilled practicing. Yeah, I
Right. And
really love
sometimes
this.
if the final objective matches, then some of the stuff that you have to do that lead up to that might not necessarily be the best for your personality type, but that's okay. Like I could
Mm.
see a shaman who values self-knowledge, like let's say Oprah. I could see if Oprah became a doctor, if we took her and put her back in the past and said, okay, just go for a doctor. I'd imagine like the field that she'd probably want to pursue is psychiatrics, right? Like wanting
Mm.
to learn about people, right? Because that totally matches self-knowledge, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe the steps to get there aren't as fun as they would be for another personality type in terms of having to go through like years and years of schooling and dissecting a human being. But once you get to that like psychiatric position, I think that's would be perfect for a shaman.
Oh yeah. This bringing up a question in my mind, and that is, for example, I want to become a doctor, just an example. And
Mhm.
I know this kind of personality that a doctor has, maybe a surgeon, for example. But I'm not that kind of personality. I don't have that kind of personality. Now, my question to you, Eric, is can I do some things to change my personality? Can I just train myself in a way that I'll be able to adjust myself to match that personality in a way that I'll be able to practice and feel fulfilled in that exact profession that I'm eager and desire in my mind to do?
Yeah, I don't believe that people can change their personality type. I think we grow into better or worse versions of our personality,
Okay.
right? Like we
Yeah.
can, on the outside, we can change, but that's generally not great, right? Like that's not good for anyone, right? It's not good for us. It's not good for the people around us
Mm.
because we're basically just lying to ourselves.
Mm.
But I think it's really important to understand our personality first. I always say, like, you want to have your anchor. If you have your anchor here, you know what you are. So then you can kind of borrow from other personality types. Like if you're, let's say, a gatherer who's a little bit more steady and certain and likes like safety and security, right? Becoming a surgeon is a little different. Surgery is very like hunter focused. Hunters are really good with surgery because it's not like a steady thing, right? You might have surgery for work 6 hours like one day and then not work for the next 2 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hunters tend to be good, obviously, like the hunters of old. Hunters tend to be good using tools. I
Mm.
mean, surgery is all tools, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a
Yeah.
gatherer, surgery is not necessarily totally fitting, but like you can clearly borrow and practice using like tools and practice all the things that a hunter does, and then work with that. And then as long as you're okay with the different hours, let's say, of surgery, then, that would be fine. I think it's more or less make sure you're not changing yourself, make sure you know who you are. And then when you do these things, you realize I'm borrowing from other personality types.
Mm. Oh, I really love that. Like not losing yourself, not changing yourself. Yeah, that's really good. And that's something that is also wonderful about your book. Your book helps everyone out there, the readers, to understand themselves and use that to also understand other people, like knowing who you are, first of all, and then knowing everyone in your life also. And that's why I'd like to know about, relationships also. Like for people out there who are seeking for a soulmate, or they're in a relationship right now, looking for dates or partners or whatnot, what should they look out for in terms of the personality? Like what personalities match with each other in a relationship? Um,
Mm.
yeah.
That's the number one question everyone asks with this stuff, right? Like I mean, once again, it goes back to like the old horoscopes, right? I'm a Cancer. Do I do well with the Scorpio? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
right. I'm not a big believer in the soulmate per se, because I feel like we can all get along with everyone, especially because I also get this question a lot from people who are already coupled, like they already have someone. And I'm like, wait, are you trying to ask me questions so that I can tell you answers that might say, yeah, leave that person? Like, I don't want to I'm not giving you that answer, right? What I always say is, based on your personality, if you are this way, and then this personality, you're probably going to conflict consistently for consistent reasons based on the personality type. And you just have to be okay with that, because we're all going to conflict to a certain extent with different personalities, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
just have to be okay with it. Like an example I can give, just since I'll mention like politics, like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, let's just say. Like Bill Clinton's a fox. And I think we all know what a fox personality type is like, right? Like I think that animal very clearly is symbolically like crafty and smooth. And Hillary Clinton, I would think, is a killer whale. And that might not be as obvious, but a killer whale is like ambitious. They're industrious, hardworking, and very like go-getter. They tend to be great students, right? So you can see if those two personalities get together as they have, we've seen their conflict, like obviously out in the open, and it makes total sense, right? Like the fox is going to want to have a little more fun than maybe they should. And I'm not saying that all foxes are philanderers, but they might, they might like to try to see other women or men, and like kind of like float around a little bit more than they probably should. And the killer whale will be more based on, is this going to help me like get ahead, right? Like, is my significant other worth my respect and worth my time? And clearly Bill Clinton obviously proved himself to be worth Hillary's respect because they're still together, right? At least in the practical terms. So yeah, I think generally, sorry, that was a long answer, but basically when people are in a relationship, they just need to know that they have to be okay with the other person's like flaws, and because that person should be okay with their flaws. And if it doesn't work out, then you probably shouldn't be together, right? If you're not okay with it.
That's very true. I think, once one is able to, I know we didn't talk about all the different animals that you've categorized them into, but I believe once we're able to understand ourselves and understand the other person that we're in a relationship with, that way we'll be able to flow with each other or know how to interact or deal with each other, basically.
Right. If you know what the other person values, you still might be mad at them, but at least you'll know why you're mad, right? You'll be like, oh yeah, like I am really I'm still pissed off, but at least I know why, right? And I think that's important.
Yeah, and you know how the person is going to respond or react to different situations, so you could also already prepare, or if you just expect it already.
Oh yeah, and in general, like I found that the most common coupling is hunter-gatherer, and you think like, oh, it would be more like gatherer-gatherer, right? Because they're similar and there's a lot of them. And, if you value safety and security, they definitely they're always looking to be in a relationship because that makes them feel like safe and secure, right? So you think if they make up half the population, that's something they're always looking for. You'd think that they would be the most common match, the two of them. But in fact, it's actually gatherers and hunters tend to match up because I think inherently we as people are attracted to our opposites, right? I know that's the cliche, opposites attract. Yeah. I mean, extreme opposites don't necessarily attract. We have to still be able to communicate with the other person. But gatherers and hunters both communicate concretely. Like they're very like, what am I seeing? What does it mean? Like kind of people. And that way they relate in that way. And then everything else is opposite. So I think we inherently kind of like are attracted to like someone that can complement us versus bring the same thing to a relationship as we do. We probably don't necessarily want that as much.
That's true. Yeah. So if you look at me, we've met and we've been talking for some minutes. Can you already distinguish my kind of personality type or already state this is kind of person Toby is, or is there something you have to do, maybe for example for a stranger also out there, after speaking with them for some couple of minutes, I already know, oh, this is the kind of personality this person has?
It depends. Obviously certain personality types are just like a lot more outward, right? Like outward in energy and stuff. So it's like, oh, okay, I think you're like this. Like, let's say a peacock. I think even when I say the personality type peacock, I think we kind of know what that person is going to act like. Like I had a friend once and she took it and she's like, I got the owl. And I'm like, you are not an owl. Cause she's very like loud and wears bright clothes, like very flashy dressed, like, kind of person. And, she's like, why would you say I'm not an owl? And I'm like, you're a peacock. She's like, why would you say I'm a peacock? I'm like, because you're loud. Peacocks are loud. And she's like, I'm not loud. She's like, okay, I am loud. But I think for you, like the way you answer that, how you seem to really want information and helping people learn about themselves. That definitely kind of goes towards the shaman bet, I'd imagine. Like I definitely, if I'm going to guess, one of the animal personality types is definitely going to be somewhere around there. So then I would modify my questions based on knowing that. So generally, if I think you're a shaman, I generally ask, were you a good student in school?
Yeah, I was a good student in school.
Oh, you were a good student. And do you like to read?
Yes, I do. Love to read.
So, yeah, generally those two questions, if you are a shaman, I would say you're a panda. That would be my guess, would be a panda. There's a couple other shaman types that are generally not the greatest students. I am a shaman and I'm that type. Obviously, as I explained earlier quite a bit, I wasn't the best student. But if you good students that like to read and are studious that are shamans tend to be pandas.
Mm. That's
But,
very interesting.
and I know I'm saying a lot of random. I know I'm saying a lot of random animals, and people are listening and like, what the heck does that mean? Sorry, you got to read. You got to read the book. You got to read the book, and then you'll know exactly what I mean. But yeah, I'd say a panda. You know, like have you ever seen Game of Thrones?
Yes, I've seen Game of Thrones. Yeah.
I love using pop culture references because people are like, oh, okay, I know what that is. I know a panda in Game of Thrones is Jon Snow is a panda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people like that because he's a main character, right? So
yeah.
Like, oh yeah, but I mean, like not pandas aren't always the main character. It just turned out that in that show, one of the main characters is a panda.
Yeah, so, I mean, along the line, he became a main character. He was not the main character from the beginning, I believe. Yeah.
Who? Oh, Jon Snow?
Jon Snow, yeah, Jon Snow.
Oh, yeah, he was like kind of off and then he grew into it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The funny thing there is like, I don't actually think in the first season or two, he doesn't actually appear like a panda. And I don't necessarily know what happened in between season 2 and season 3, but it's kind of like when season 3 hits, then he starts doing more panda things. It becomes more about who am I and discovering himself versus in the beginning, it's more like, I just want to go to the wall and like feel the snow on my face, and fight, which is,
I believe he got to discover himself and he grew into himself. He grew into his true self.
Right. And, it's going to be weird for any listeners who haven't seen the show Game of Thrones, but it's funny because, with a panda and he's a shaman and obviously he hooks up with Ygritte, who is very clearly a hunter. She's literally a hunter in the show, right? But she's very like very much into like, no, I hunt. I'm very specific. I move around. I don't have any set security. Like it's just me and you. That's it. We're going to move around and do our thing. Like, so it's interesting to see their personalities clash and also connect in a certain way.
Yeah. It's a wonderful dance of personality types.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Game of Thrones is awesome because there's so many different, I use it quite a bit for personality because there's so many characters and they're all very, very well drawn. So and they interact with each other, right? So you can kind of bounce off, like you see this personality bouncing off of this one, and then you see them bouncing off of this one. It's like really entertaining to see that.
Oh, that's awesome. But what's the difference between, these categories that we've had so far with the animals and with the, shaman and, being tagged as an introvert, an extrovert, alpha, beta, delta, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah. Back to the MBTI terms, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back, it's not even an MBTI term. It goes back even to like further, right? To like Carl Jung, who I love, by the way. I love Carl Jung. But the way I explain it in the book is introversion, extroversion is the easiest thing to see in people. And when you look at gatherers, you make up about half the population. Introversion and extroversion actually is a kind of good way to distinguish between the different gatherers. So in a way, it was correct, but it was only really works for about half the population. But I could see how people would think, when you see something working for half the population, then it's very easy for someone to say, oh yeah, this is like 100% of the population clearly, right? Like, of course it works. So I think in general, and not only that, but gatherers are the most likely to volunteer for studies because, they believe in doing good and keeping like a secure civilization. So they're the most likely to volunteer. They're like, oh yeah, I want to help out. Like I want to like help these people. So they'll volunteer. So you have a lot of gatherers in these studies, like overrepresented. So they're probably like 80% of the people in these studies when they do. And then it's clear. People are like, oh yeah, this is clearly something that's important with people, introversion, extroversion, right?
Yeah.
But, as I've studied it, people get mad because they're like, wait a minute, but I'm extroverted in this situation and introverted in this situation. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And so there has to be something more to it than that. There has to be some kind of context. Mm-hmm. And that's where I went back to the values thing, right? So if you value something highly, then you are going to appear more extroverted, right? Because you're going to be more outgoing with it and you're going to like care about it more. You're going to push your agency a bit more. And if you value something a little less, then you're probably going to be, whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, you guys can do whatever you want, So I think in general, it all comes back to the values again versus like outward things that we see like introvert or extrovert.
Yeah. It's deeper than what we see. That's true. Wow. Thank you so much, Eric. I've learned so much from speaking with you about personality types. Thank you so much. I would like you to tell us about Utopia and your book also, and the best way to connect with all of the services that you offer and maybe to work with you also.
Oh, so the book, you can buy it anywhere you buy books. I always say, if you can buy it clearly on Amazon if you want to give Jeff Bezos your money. And it's called The Power of Personality. And then you can find me on like the internet on my website. I have 2 websites. That's why it's kind of confusing. And you can find me on utopiaproject.com, and that's YOU, like YouTube. So utopiaproject.com, and that's where you can actually take a test to see what animal personality type you are. Full disclaimer, of course, as I mentioned before, it's just a test. Buy the book generally, and then that's a better way to figure it out. And then you can find out my life coaching and my writing coaching on projectutopia.com, and just like flip the order of those two things.
Awesome. I'm going to place a link to your website in the show notes of this episode. In that link, you can also find links to where you could get the book from. I'll encourage everyone out there who has listened so far to get the book, connect with Eric. If you have further questions, just reach out to him. Thank you so much, Eric. It has been wonderful speaking with you and learning so much about personality types from you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Toby. I had a lot of fun.
Hey there, podcast enthusiasts. Are you ready to add a little sparkle to your day? If you're loving the insightful conversations and captivating stories on Mirror Talk Podcast, here's a friendly nudge to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the empowering messages and thought-provoking discussions we bring to your ears. But wait, there's more. We're all about spreading positivity and inspiration, and you can be a part of it too. How? By sharing the love with your friends and family. Share this episode with your loved ones, and let's create a ripple effect of empowerment and growth together. And hey, if you've been enjoying what you hear, why not take a moment to leave us a glowing 5-star review? Your feedback fuels our passion to keep delivering content that resonates with you. So hit that subscribe button, share the love, and leave us a review. Let's keep the conversation going and spread the Mirror Talk magic far and wide. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, your support means the world to us.